Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Clement.
Thank you for joining us on our webinar, the second one under the GCRF Mind, Dust and Health Network. And this one will be focusing on how we can see the organization of fence-line communities in the context of mining. And our presenter for the day is none other than Mr. Brown Motsau from the Benchmarks Foundation. So, Mr. Brown Motsau, his short biography and his abstract for the presentation have been sent via the link for those who would want to reread. But to avoid spending most of the time, I will give this time to him to introduce his presentation and what he'll be sharing with us. Just some gentle reminders on the etiquette on the platform. Since everyone is a panelist, those that will join, may you kindly ensure that your mics are off, and we'll get to the Q&A session. So you can either raise your hand or type your question in the chat section. Please take note that because we've gone on the panelist platform as everyone, as opposed to attendees, we cannot use the Q&A session, this section of the Zoom platform. So we'll be only attending to questions via chat or if one raises their hand. So please kindly take note of that. That takes us to Mr. Motsau. It's your time to present.
Thank you, Clement. Let me see if I can turn on my camera. I hope I can. Okay, it's on now. Are you by any chance able to see me?
I can see you, but you are sideways.
Sideways. Okay,
Yes.
I don't know what happened then. I've just turned on my camera and I'm sitting on laptop. Okay, let me do this and see if that will help. Let me pull up my presentation and see if it will help to some kind of put things in order. Does it help?
Your camera is still showing you as sideways, but your presentation is okay. We can see it.
I don't know how to, to deal with it now. Can somebody advise me on how to turn it around? If anybody knows, I don't know how to. I've just clicked camera. I don't know what else to do.
Unfortunately, I can't figure it out from this side, but maybe if you just turn your camera off for a little bit and
Okay,
just carry on with the presentation, and we'll see if we can sort it out in the meantime.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Camilla.
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for invitation that has been received from the Mind Dust at UCT. My name is Brown Motsau, and I'm with the Benchmarks Foundation, and I have been invited to come and give a seemingly a longish input on the impact of mine dust in on mining communities, mining host communities. And I've prepared this presentation and I will try and run through it, and I will try to also be very cautious of the time to ensure that we have sufficient time for engagement and discussions and so on. It is titled Mine Dust Seminar, Organizing Fence-Line Communities. The rationale is to try and present the faceless people that sometimes we don't see who reside or who borders this mine tailings, amongst others. So I'm just going to go straight into it. And Ledwin, you would caution me if there's time limitation or if you want me to stop, but I will try and run as fast as I can.
You have up to about 35 to 40 minutes to present, 35, and then the balance will be for questions. So that
that's
people
fine.
can...
That's fine, super. Let me just go to the next step. So my presentation template will be as follows. I'll give a quick historical background of what the Benchmarks is, why the research topic that has been put on the table, life cycle of a mine. I'll just give a diagram on that, What is mine tailing? I will try and unpack and explain what that is and the impact of the tailings, how they impact the host communities. I will try to talk a little bit about the wind direction and the mine hosting communities, especially in and around Soweto. I will talk a little bit about environmental racism, in particular to African communities. I will try and draw the relationship between Danville and Riverlea as a case study that we did in the past. And on recommendations, I have a lot of photos of the type of actions that the benchmarks is involved with and the benchmarks is doing. So I will just run through them, and I'm hoping that our time will permit, because it's only photos, so I won't have a lot of time. I will just be talking, skimming through them and talking to photos. I thought it might be a more efficient way of using my time towards the end and try and talk more at the beginning. So SACC Benchmarks Foundation, historical background of it, it's an organization that has been started by SACC. The concept of it, SACC pre-1994 set into two conferences. One was Boere's-Stroom, another one was Regrad, something like that. And these conferences, those of us who are Christians, we believe in the role of the church having a prophetic role in society, and the church being able to see things before they happen. And one of the things that we believe in is that the church being a body of Christ in the world, it does have a particular role in society. Therefore, SACC in 1998 set in two conferences, and the agreement in that conference, one of the outcomes was the church foresaw that sooner or later apartheid will come to an end. And when apartheid do come to an end, because of the conversations that were taking place, they needed to set up an institution that will help the South African Council of Churches to advise the government about the companies that are coming to invest in South Africa. You might remember that during the time of apartheid was a crime against humanity. So a lot of companies were discouraged from investing in South Africa. So what happened is that now post 94, you would remember that Bishop Tutu, Nelson Mandela, they went all over the world, hoovering investment to come back in South Africa. You might know that the companies such as Chevy's and so on, they started coming back to South Africa post 94. Anyway, let me get into the presentation. So the church history, it was actually around the thinking of the Benchmarks Foundation was around the Civil Code, which was one of the codes that was used by the churches to deal with the oppression that people were experiencing in South Africa, and to ensure that people, the companies comply to ethical investment conduct. And in 1998, a conference was held of 22 countries where the benchmarks principle, for which we used today as a document for measuring business performance, for which we as an institution, we use it as a benchmarks for us to do a research that we conduct against multinational corporations. So a steering committee was set up, and it was to focus on ethical investment forum. And when that happened, it took a decision to the launch of the Benchmarks Foundation. That's after Rio the second, Rio Tinto, Rio de Janeiro meeting, the world meeting that happened in 2001 on Rio. South Africa was appointed as an organization that will actually come and host the Benchmarks Foundation, and the steering committee agreed, without any objections, that we should become a secretariat of a number of organizations, mostly they are religious organization, and the office was ultimately set up in 2003, and the executive director was appointed at that time. And the first major report that was launched by the Benchmarks Foundation was in 2007. And one might wonder why. That's because there were a whole lot of things that had to be dealt with from the time of setting up to the time when we launched the first. There were a number of other smaller reports that were launched in between. But the first major report was launched in 2007. And to date, we have about 13 policy gap reports that we have produced as an institution. Okay, how do I go next here? Okay, oh, sorry. Okay, and the programs of the Benchmarks Foundation, we have 4 pillars, and I'm sorry for those of you who are Christians. This cross does not necessarily symbolize the cross that we just came out from, the long weekend of crucifixion, no. is just simply to try and point out that we have four pillars of our programs, one being the policy research series, community monitors project on the left, and we have independent problem solving savers and corporate personality index. I will talk a little bit about the research. I will talk intensely about the community monitors project, but I would not spend a lot of time talking about independent problem solving savers and corporate social responsibility index. I think those are issues for another time as well. And the policy gap research is the one that we used. I've mentioned that we started with it. It is the major research that the benchmarks do, and it is actually used to measure a gap between what the company policies are saying and the practice on the ground, especially in relation to the mining companies. And somebody might ask, our approach, do we use, how do we use it? Do we use a carrot stick? Or do we use or do we use a yardstick type of approach to try and deal with this corporate social responsibility? I think we'll uncover the nuts and bolts of it as we go down, but there are a number of policy gap research that have been done. We've done one in platinum mines in Zambia, in Limpopo, Platinum 3, DPS, that's Botswana. We've done research, policy gap research in DRC, in few countries. So there are a number of policy gap reports that we've done. And the life of trying to stick to, this time flies. Generally, the mine cycle looks like this on what you see on your screen. And from the beginning, which is on your top left, from the land clearing of the topsoil, especially if they are doing an open cast mining, you would find there is some amount of dust that is experienced by the community. To drilling, there is a dust that is experienced by the community. To overburden, when the trucks are carrying the soil and taking it to the dumps, you would find that there's a dust throughout the life of a mine. Basically, that's what it shows here, that everywhere where mining face, especially here I've made an example with an open cast, because the underground mining, it still does environmental damage, but it is not as worse as an open cast. So I used an example of a coal mine here in Mpumalanga, and how the dust that is involved in the life cycle of a mine. And whichever picture you look at here, you might just imagine there is some amount of dust that is being spewed into the air. And it so happens that in South Africa, all these mining companies are next to the hosting communities. What is a tailing dam and how does it look like? If you can look at that picture, you can see in the background, there's a picture that was taken in Rivoli. Tailing is a mine waste dump left after the extraction of minerals such as gold, uranium, silver, lead, copper, coal, platinum from the earth, and is carried out in a manner that is inherently threatening to human life because it is poisonous. And I've shown some example, and I'll go into the nuts and bolts of it. And samples were analyzed for the 21st focal heavy metal, primarily chosen based on the previous. Can you just give me a glass of water? My cold is coming back. Give me a glass of water, please. Yes. So this focal heavy metal included silver, aluminium, arsenic, barium, cadmium, chromium, copper, iron, mercury, magnesium. So there are all sorts of heavy metals that you find in these tailings. And sometimes this tailing, if you look them on the side, you might see different colors, you know, like the brownish color being copper, the orange color being uranium. You can see the arsenic, you can see all sorts of colors. If you go there, I have some photos which I could not be able to share with you today because of time limitations that we have on this presentation, but they are all available. Maybe on a longer slide that I will send to Ledwin after this, I should insert them and then send them over to you to take a look at them. Thank you. Thank you, sweetheart. And then many studies have focused on work-related, have not focused on illnesses suffered by mine workers, and also the mine hosting community, yet relatively few have been conducted in the greater impact of mining and the wider environment and its effect on the people who are living downstream or downwind of the mining companies. And yeah, this picture might be very familiar to some of you. Oh, this picture might be very familiar to some of you. it indicates that the 6,000 abandoned mines that we have in South Africa, and you may already know, most of you, that 600 of those alone, they are in Johannesburg. And they are abandoned and derelict. So some of them, they've been left open, and the benchmarks has been advancing over the years to ensure that some of these open shafts that are left out by the previous mining owners, DMR has managed to plug, you know, those shafts, but many more have been left unrehabilitated. And this is a picture that was taken in Rivali with the comrades there, and we're trying to engage with the people who are operating on site. You could see them, the crushers, the sand crushers and so on, the stone crushers, and you can see some amount of dust, and you can see the way that people are covering themselves. This is just next to Rivali, and this community is suffering from all sorts of illnesses. And some doctors, including some health professionals, have indicated that these are illnesses that are associated to mining, such as asthma. Some of them, they have silicosis. Some of them around Rustenburg. This one is platinosis. It's for people who come from Rustenburg. We have TB. We have lung cancer. They have sinuses. Eczema is everywhere. You can stop, you know, randomly. Little children playing in Rivali, and you stop and you look at their skin, you will start seeing the patches that looks like 50-cent coins on their skin here to indicate the eczema poisoning. They have eye problems, bone cancer is very common, stomach cancer, lung cancer. We have manipulation of DNA codes for fetus. We have a lot of children who are born with cerebral palsy. We have a lot of children who are deformed. We have a lot of people who are living on respiratory machine in Rivali. And these are people that we know by name. We can touch them, and a whole lot of them have passed on now or due to COVID, because they already have comorbidities, and the arrival of COVID has some kind of turned a whole lot of them into victims. Our monitors tell us, who are working in Soweto and in Rivali, that during the first and the second wave, they've never seen so many burials. In one street, you will, at some point, you will get 2 or 3 funerals, which has never happened before. And a lot of people that we used to have on our database as people who were ill, either they were having respiratory illnesses, they were living on oxygen mask and so on. A lot of them, we have lost them since last year. And environmental racism, these are some of the tailings. I'm just going to talk to them quickly. Oh, time flies. And it indicates the locality. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor here, but this is where the townships are, the townships of Soweto. This is the township of Soweto, and you can find the tailings. And this side as well, if you can see my cursor by any chance, these are the townships, this side, and this is the township towards Krugersdorp. You know, this one is towards Krugersdorp, the side towards Krugersdorp. They are all surrounded by tailings. And we do know that a lot of them, a lot of this area that we would find, they are built next to the tailings. It will be areas like Soweto or Meadowlands, Rivali, Dobsonville, Reiche Park in the East Rand. You go to Velkom, you find Tabong. You go to Virginia, Meloding in Free State. You go to Odendaalsrus. You go to Luka in Rustenburg. You would find a lot of time that the African residents, rather African, the black African residents, they are the one who, for some reason, either by default, their houses are built next to this tailings, or the tailings like the one that we're having a super dump now that is being constructed in East Rand of Johannesburg, next just after Carnival City, right at the back. Those are the black townships, and all of a sudden a super dump, all these dumps in west of Johannesburg, they are being remined and they are being dumped, you know, next to these areas where you historically find African people or black South Africans, as we would call it. What is interesting is that through our research, we also picked up that there are about 270 tailings dams in the Witwatersrand Basin. And the Witwatersrand Basin, remember, it starts from the area of Heidelberg in Johannesburg. It comes through Springs, it cuts through Johannesburg, Randfontein, it goes to Carletonville, Potchefstroom, That's the Witwatersrand Basin. It goes to Klerksdorp, it goes into Allenreach, Welkom. It ends around Kennezel in Free State. So it is in some kind of a C shape or an S shape. And there are about 270 tailings that the research indicates by Anglo Platinum in 2004 that there are about 270 tailings, including the residue areas, the areas where the residues have spilled over, or the runoffs. The areas where there are runoffs, I think there are about 180 runoff areas. Especially a lot of them, you find them in the west end of Johannesburg as well. This is a picture that I wanted to share with you, but it's more about the story that this is next to the school, next to what you call FNB. I forgot the name of the school. We went there. It is a college, it's called Southwest Johannesburg. Okay, the Southwest Johannesburg College. It's right next to Shaft 17 in Johannesburg. And this is one of the most highly radioactive area. We even found this dusk, the signage being plugged at the door near to the shaft. And fascinating, we asked a security who was on site the day when we arrived on the site, and we asked them, man, do you know what that sign is it for? Because the security guard was just walking there without any mask, without any protective clothing, and so on. He said, yes. My supervisor told me that that's because I have a two-way radio, because the security guard was holding a two-way radio, you know, the one that they used to patrol and so on. And he was not really told the real reason of why, what does it mean to say radiation area. He understood the word radiation to be meaning radio. That's what he was told. And this area, it's highly contaminated. And we find a number of these areas. We find them around Tudo Shaft. We find them around the west end of Johannesburg, where mines have been left abandoned. I have a short video here that I don't know if I can have a minute to show it to you, half a minute, in fact, or a few seconds, of PM2 dust. This was taken through a Leica. Let me see if I can do, let me know if you can see it. It is, it will just show you the smallest particles of, kindly let me know if it is visible to you. Otherwise, I might have to get out of the screen and then. Are you able to see it on your end?
No, we can't see it.
It's not.
Is it opening?
No.
Nothing.
Nothing.
You don't see anything?
Yes. Zoom tends to have a tendency of you wanting to first put it under a file in Zoom, then you can play the video. So yeah.
Okay, let me try another way. Just give me a second to just quickly try and do. Okay, I need to. Okay, let's close this. No, maybe I should leave it open. I want to show you PM10. This was taken through an ordinary cell phone. No, it's not an ordinary. It's a. Oh, okay. I need to. Okay, I don't know. How do I get back there? Come on. Okay, I am going now to have to. Are you able to see anything? Nothing at the moment. Okay, I'm going to stop this and then try and shade differently. Let me try and shade differently with a different program. Okay, here we go. Open it here first. Okay. Okay, now that it's open, I'm going to pause it here, and then go back to Zoom. Zoom share screen. Nope, it's refusing to shade.
Okay.
Anyway, let me leave it. Let me just leave it and then maybe continue with. I will shade with I don't know how you're going to see it, but I'll just have to shade. But it is a Highway Pro 30. with a Leica camera, and it uses a 40 megapixels. It took a nice picture of how PM2 dust particles look like. It's like a fraction of your hair. That's how tiny it is. You are unable to see it, but this is inside the house. You know, in the morning when the sun starts rising, and then the sun comes through the window, and you open the window, and there are this small, fine, you know, dust particles that you see, and it was taken in Rivoli. So we have a nice picture of that that I would have loved to share with you. Let's see. All right. Okay, that I would have loved to share with you, but unfortunately it's refusing to open. So we have a number of people, as I said, in Rivoli who have passed on because of this, and the emotional and health implications of the dust that is coming from the mine. You can see on the right here, you can see from a distance somebody sitting on the railway railings, and the dust in the background. And you will have time. I'm looking at my time. It says 26 minutes. It means I have about 14 minutes to run through all this slides. I'll have to pass on this one, but you'll have an opportunity to read through about the emotional and health impacts. For example, people living in the squatter camps are complaining about alcohol, substance. Okay, that's other issues. But on environmental issues, people complaining about the dust level. People are complaining about the noise levels. It's not only dust that is impacting people, it is also the noise level that are coming from the mines, the trucks that are being driven around, the trucks that are shuttling in and out through their communities to go and collect the minerals. And we do know that the result of this informal settlement around the mining companies, it is because of living out allowance. And the people who are living in informal settlement, they are most likely to be affected because corrugated housing is not necessarily proofed, you know, to stop dust from outside from coming in. So we have a number of photos of people showing us the dust from inside their houses and how they look like and so on. Here I have a picture of Auntie Rose. We have a permission, by the way, to actually share her slide. She's living on a respiratory machine. You can see this is a respiratory machine, and she has this thing. She lives on this thing. She can hardly walk for more than a kilometer. She always have to be on site, and they are having a serious problem at the moment with the load shedding that are taking place in and around Rivoli, because with load shedding, because of this tailing, she resides next to this tailing dam. With this load shedding, it means their oxygen mask does not work, so they must always have a gas cylinder. So an oxygen cylinder next to them, and the oxygen cylinder, sometimes they take time before they actually delivered by the hospital to them. So if you don't have oxygen a cylinder, it means you are in trouble, and that's how we have lost a few of our comrades. And you can even see a baby there. I'm hoping that you can see the slides. I'm running through them quickly. Of a child, it's not only the adults. You would see a baby there who also lives on this oxygen respiratory machine. And without this respiratory machine, the people who are residing in this area cannot live for a very long. This is the mother of the child, and you can see the tailings in the background, just above the house, what looks, that area that looks like it has trees and so on. This is in Rivoli, and this is Paula. At the time when we took this, she was only 39 years of age. This is about a year ago when we took this. And we have now some of the solutions of what we are trying to do, and some of the solutions. We have what we consider to be a problem tree that indicates where the problems come from and when the mine comes into their own community and how they can effectively engage with the mines when it comes to the community. The first thing that we pick up is that this mine dust in communities that we had to spend a whole lot of years to try and explain between the young generation and the older generation to say, listen, this is not your fault, because young people will be blaming their parents, and their parents will be blaming young people of creating dust in the community, not understanding what are the impacts, and not looking after themselves, leaving the doors open and so on. So we took a lot of time to try and re-educate the communities that we work with to understand the problems we need to start first at the grassroots to identify what is the root cause of the problem, how did the problem come into being, and how did you end up being where you are. But I'll try and explain it in a form of the slides quickly. I have about 10 minutes. our starting point, we are working not only in South Africa, we are working in Zambia, in Zimbabwe, Malawi, Botswana, Lesotho, Mozambique, DRC, Angola, Tanzania, as far as Burkina Faso. We start there first with working with small group of what we call action groups. Sorry about that. I've been having a bit of a cold. I was just taking water. So we have about 12 countries that we are working with in Africa, and we start with small groups of people to make them aware of the impact of mining, in particular dust. You can see the group of young people here standing. You can see in the background there a nice, beautiful hills that are covered by dust and so on. So we have a program that's concentrating on this. And what we do is that we identify people from various communities. We have started to include gas and oil amongst others. We've been invited in areas where there's gas and oil, and we are starting to work with those communities. And we start very simple. We just sit under the tree. We don't even need fancy offices or something like that. Have an engagement with them about what they think the problems are in their society. And then that's where the starting point of them to try and resist what is happening in their community starts. And from there, it grows. We now, in all the communities where we are working, we have what started as a small cells or small group of people who are about between 5 and 10. They have managed to establish community-based organizations. They are registered. They are setting up their own democratic processes on how to account. The next point is teaching them how to do creative writing. And we are saying creative writing because a lot of them, they might be unemployed. Some of them, they might be unemployed for about 5 years. Therefore, their confidence in writing, it diminishes over time if you don't write after a very long time. And there are various ways of helping them to actually find, their confidence back, either through drawing or even using simple, I think, while I was growing up, we would call it, they don't call it mix it. There's this mix it language that we were using while we were younger. I often talk to my son about that. He would say, I am waiting for you. And he will write W number 8 and 4, and then U. So W number 8, number 4, and then alphabet capital U. It means waiting. And sometimes when I read those things, I tend to struggle because I don't understand the language. So we find some of our community monitors that we work with using that kind of language to actually tell their own story, because our concern is always that if they don't write their own stories, there will be somebody who come from outside, like ourselves, who will come and write their stories for them. And we've started to document their stories that they are writing, just to correct the language, put it in a language that is understandable. And we have a number of booklets that we are establishing. Once they gain their confidence, we take them on site, so what we call the transect walk. They walk on site where the tailings are, where their rivers are, where the discharge points are. With their notepads, they start taking notes. We teach them on how to monitor and what to look out for. And then we give them the skills on how to set up their own accounts, either Facebook or the web page, what do you call it, the blog. So they create the blogs where they can write their own stories. All the community groups that we are working with, they have their own blogs. They write their own stories in their own language, and they don't have to worry too much about the grammar or something like that, because that's their own story that they want to tell to the world. And all those community groups that we work with at the moment, they do have the blogs. We also have an app. It's called Action Voice, one word, Action Voice. No space in between the two words, and it is red in color. If you download it from Android, you will pick it up. And on a daily basis, you get stories, real life story on real time of things that are happening, including the photos. So they just upload the stories there on a daily basis, and you get an update. And we have a number of mining companies that are following that, journalists who are reporting, not only in South Africa, but in the region as well. And then they learn to document their own stories, draw maps of their own communities, where the problems are, where the hotspots are, and then they are able to explain that. They are also able to upload it on their blogs, and they're able to tell you where the problems are, what could be the source of the problem, how to mitigate them, if there are any areas of affluent discharge that are being released by the company, they will do so. If there's a wind direction, they will write it out, you know, nicely in their own diagrams and be able to interpret that to anybody. So this is always done in a teamwork. We don't work with individual, but we always work with groups of people and so on. And they will write there what they see as a problem. For example, the one in this is in Ikemereng. They say dumping in Ikemereng causing health problems to the community. They will have a cause, they will have remedy, they will have action, and then they will develop that into their action plan. They will go on site. I indicated this already. They will go to the site. This is a typical block that a community will have. This is not necessarily a benchmarks block. It is one of the community blocks. This one is for Ikemereng. So they have blocks like this where they actually write their own stories and upload their own stories. They have their Facebook page where you can go, and these are the type of reports that benchmarks annually will have an action voice report from the stories that they themselves are writing. There will be a selection from various communities because we have so many communities, and a dossier of stories that have been told by the monitors will be compiled, and then it will be published, which relates to how you can see at the back there, there's a flaring. I think this photo was in Sasolburg. Yes, it is in Sasolburg. There's a flaring at the back because of Sasol and Secunda. Like I indicated, we now have a request in areas where there's oil and gas exploration in South Africa. We are part of the alternative mining indaba, where we take all this information that we have and then we share it with people at international level. And through alternative mining indaba, it has some kind of placed a lot of burden on the Benchmarks Foundation to ensure that this community monitors and IPSS, Independent Problem Solving Service, I should stop talking in abbreviations, and the research of the benchmarks is demanded and is wanted by people from all over. And that has some kind of put a strain on the capacity of the benchmarks to do our work effectively. There are other countries where we just have to politically agree. We don't have capacity, but we can train people. We can ask them to send people here. We train them and they can go back to their own countries and roll out. All we do is to monitor because we are a fairly small organization. We don't have a huge capacity to cater for the whole region. So this is an example of the meeting. We have a huge global coverage when it comes to media. When we release an article in South Africa, oftentimes it tends to before you know, within 24 hours, it is already reported in New York, in the mainstream media. The video recordings that the monitors are doing, they get broadcast in various television, current affairs television channels, both in South Africa and in other countries and so on. There's almost every week there is an article that we release and it gets printed into the mainstream media in South Africa in particular. And we've been successful in doing this over years. You have about 2 minutes. Yes, I think I'm done. Yes, I managed to do it with 2 minutes to spare. Sure. Hello.
Thank you very much, Brown, for that nice presentation. So for those who are just joining us, that was Mr. Brown Motsau, and those that joined us a bit later, who was presenting to us on organizing fence line communities in the context of mining. This is primarily under one of our 5 key areas, which is stakeholders, key themes, which is the stakeholder awareness and education, or community awareness and education. So, Mr. Motsau, this is now time for the Q&A. So I'm going to take us through the questions.
Are you by any chance able to see anything on your screen now? I'm trying to show you this dust particle, seeing that I have few minutes.
Yes.
I don't know. Okay, but now it is blown too big for my screen. How do I reduce it? I want to not full screen. This is inside the house in Rivoli. I don't know if you are able to see this. I had to go on Facebook and try to get it from Facebook. No, I don't think you can see it properly. So I should have downloaded it or something. Anyway.
You can see the particles though.
Yes.
Oh, you can?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Okay. So this is time for our participants to take us through the question. Anyone to take us off? Kick us off? If there are none, then I'll ask
We've got a
Brown.
raised hand.
Oh,
We've got a few raised hands. Theron, I'm
oh,
not sure if you can see.
sorry,
We've
I was
got
monitoring
Jenny Broadhurst and Mehdi
and
Safari.
Bali. Sorry, I was
Yes.
looking at the chart, so it had closed up the names. So I'll start with Bali.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Brown, for the presentation. I've got a question specifically with regards to the causal relationship between dust and the health of the community in Rivalia. So, are there any studies, epidemiological studies that show us directly that there is a link between the dust and the health impacts that we see in the community?
Thank you for that question, Brown. Your mic is muted.
Sorry, I wanted to know if I should just to respond to them immediately, or I should note the question first.
Maybe take one at a time.
Okay. At the moment, yep. At the moment, we are in a process of doing epidemiological studies in Rivali with NIOH, National Institute for Occupational Health. We will be putting in through the University of Johannesburg. They've offered to give us their testing station, which is a horse and trailer, a trailer of a horse and trailer, if you know what I'm talking about. But it is actually a monitoring station. It will be placed in Rivali, and it will be staying there for a couple of weeks. We just have to find a secured area. We are in communication with Rivali Mining Forum, who are helping us to do so. We have the dust meters that are going to be placed inside the people's houses to measure the dust that is able to go inside people's houses and so on. There are also other electronic meters that will be placed in areas like community center to assess the amount of dust that is being discharged by these tailings, so that the research that we've been making all these years so far, including before we do this epidemiological studies, because it will be the first one that the benchmarks is doing of this scale, and with a government institution in a form of NIOH, because it is an institution of government. We have never had anyone necessarily objecting to our findings, because it is supported by many other academic work that has been done by people who are outside the Benchmarks Foundation. But the reason why we are doing this, because we are realizing an opportunity for possibility of possibly a civil litigation if the community, because the community of Rivali Mining Forum, sorry, the members of Rivali Mining Forum has indicated an interest of having a civil litigation against these companies. And it is in that context that we are now trying to get a tangible proof that can be taken to court and that can be tested.
Thank you, Brown. I'll give Mehdi the second question, then to go on to David, and then Jenny.
Thank you for your great presentation. Actually, you explained a bit now. My main question was, you said you guys start to have an amazing platform that people can raise the issue that exists surrounding where they're living. And even there are some mining representatives that they monitor those forums and they see what's going on. My question is first about, is this system take the security of people? Is that those companies, they can see who is raising this issue? It might make some security risk for them, because probably they don't want to, some people release this information. And based on that, there was any issue that raised by people and through that platform, which might start to act on that, to show that how this platform was successful. Thank you.
Just a quick one on that is that these issues that we are presenting here and that we are sharing with you, it's things that historically, before even benchmarks was there, the communities have always had a problem with. There are some communities where we move in and we find that there is already organizations that are trying to resist or they are raising these issues. But the mining officials, they are not interested to listen to them because they're just community members who does not have the capacity that the benchmarks have, the support of the church. They don't have access to the media that the benchmarks is able to have access to. And therefore, these companies, they are very happy to come to the benchmarks office and to meet with the executive director or the staff of the Benchmarks Foundation because of the issues that we are raising. They know we are going to make it, we are going to make them notorious. We are going to put the information out if they don't engage with us. And they will be glad to come to the benchmarks office. And this is what we have developed as a strategy. If a mining company wants to come and meet with us on the basis of a report that we have released, we invite the very same community who reside in the area, who have been sending letters and trying to engage with the company. When they arrive in our boardroom, they find this community sitting there with us. And we say, okay, listen, before we even engage on our own issues, we just want you to listen to these communities because we have a proof of them writing letters to you, trying to engage with you about the concerns that they've been raising. The very same ones that the benchmarks have written to you, now that they are in the media, you are willing to come and meet with the benchmarks and you're willing to listen to the benchmarks as an organization that has credibility, but you don't listen to the very same community. And that some kind of has acted as a buffer, a safety zone, because these mining companies, they know that the benchmarks is always watching them. They know we have a structured system of community monitors who are monitoring what is happening on the ground. They do know that we know where they reside. They do know that there's some kind of safety security that we offer to them in terms of giving them support, ensuring that they have internet, they have access to cell phones, they're able to capture the kind of videos that we got. This one was captured by David van Wyk downtown in Johannesburg, or he stays in one of the skyscrapers there, the dust that I've shown you there, amongst others. So they do know that they are always being watched. So there's no room for them to escape. They do know that even the communities that write and that post on this app, I remember I told you about the app, they follow this app and they follow the stories. And interesting enough, since we established this means, including the platforms that we have, you would find that if they post something that is, radically threatening, within hours, you will have mine officials on site addressing those impacts, which didn't happen before. So having this type of community monitors, it does help as a spin-off because it keeps the company in check because they know if they don't respond to it, if they don't act on it, benchmark is going to come on site and something is bound to happen. Either we're going to report them to the officials or we're going to exert a public pressure on them or insist on talking to their head office and so on. So there are multi-pronged approach that we use to this. But so far, there has been some intimidation amongst the monitors that we work with, but we are quickly able to deal with it because they do know that there's an international organization that is always looking at them.
Thank you, Brown, for alluding to that stakeholder engagement or stakeholder awareness, which is one of the reasons why the theme is being moved from community awareness to stakeholder, so that everyone can be brought onto the table. David, your question? Sorry, David, your mic is muted.
Yeah, I just want to quickly add on to what Brown said about academic research and so on around the issue of dust and people's health. The Medical Research Council has done research in the area on both lead and arsenic. This is the area of Rivoli. At the moment, the Medical Research Council is also looking at hair samples and blood samples of people from the community. And the University of Northwest has also done research into mine dust and hair samples, finding that a lot of the heavy metals that you find in the mine dumps themselves and in the dust in the houses is also found in the bodies of people. We also did a joint project with Al Jazeera and Martin Boudreau around Snake Park and the big Vlakfontein dump over there. And we did send samples off to laboratories in France, as well as to laboratories in South Africa and so on. And again, we found that there was quite a high level of heavy metals present in the blood of or in the hair samples of people that we took samples from. And there's a wide variety of academic papers and so on around this particular issue as well. It is just that communities are poor and corporations are rich. And for communities to be able to take on a corporation in court is a very difficult thing, because it can go on for a very, very long time, a court case, and communities run out of funds and resources with which to carry through these particular cases. We know that the Land Buyers Association in Rustenburg have been involved in a court case of almost 15 years. The people at Tolobeni, their cases in various courts and so on have taken over 10 years, you know, so it's not an easy thing. It's not a cheap thing. It's a very difficult thing, because, justice depends on how much resources you actually have to realize it. Thank you.
Just a quick one, Gladwin. I can see there's a comment in the chat box, I think from Mbali.
Yes.
Yes. She's asking, what about inhalation and ingestion? And I did mention, I think, the problems that we're discovering of DNA codes of children being manipulated before birth. To say, once you ingest, once you eat the small particles, and once you inhale them, they get into your system. The problem with them is that they are so tiny you can't see them with the naked eye. And once you inhale them or you ingest them, they have a potential of going into the DNA and then manipulating the DNA formation in the pregnant ladies. We have so many children. I think in Snake Park, we've just discovered, since we started doing work there, initially, the Black communities, if you have a child who's deformed, because they are right next to one of the biggest Mooifontein tailings dam, people would hide children with deformities. But after about 3-4 years of working persistently in that community, people started coming out and opening their doors and saying, listen, we also have the same problem. We have a child in the house that has been hidden behind the couch because we were afraid what people will say. Now we are discovering it's not only us who are having a child who's deformed and so on. So we even have the live pictures that I could have shared if time permitted, of children who are affected by this from a very young age. We even have a child who looks like he's possibly about 6 years, but it's actually about 18 years. I mean, that's how deformity, the amount of deformities. This child cannot walk, cannot speak, cannot do anything. We have now a community activist in Riveri who have just registered. They've got their registration, I think, about a few days ago. Last week, about registering an organization of children with cerebral palsy, because in one area, Snake Park alone in Soweto, they have more than 50 children, and there's possibly others that we don't know of, but that's just in one area where we are working. It's about 50 children, and we've been supporting those children over years.
Thank you, Brown, for answering, for adding to that answer to Mbali's question. That will take us to Jenny.
Hi, thank you, Brown, for that and for the additional commentary from David. As you say, a very extensive work. I just wanted to ask you, apart, obviously, you've done a lot of work around Rivoli, which is the Witwatersrand Gold Basin. Other areas that you're working, I believe that you're in Zambia. So if you can maybe elaborate on the sort of areas you're working in, where you're finding a lot of community-related impacts and effects of mining, and also who you're collaborating with. I think David made a very good point about how this is very resource intensive, and you have mentioned the National Institute of Health and UJ, but it would be interesting to know who you're dealing with, particularly in other countries like Zambia.
Okay, it is fascinating. There are certain areas where you would swear, if you close your eyes, and you listen to people talk, other than their accent, you would swear that the stories that they are telling, you could be told by somebody in Soweto, somebody you won't tell the difference between somebody who resides in Kaliekera and somebody who resides in Soweto, because their stories are almost like copy and paste, because these minerals, it doesn't matter which country they are being mined. Kaliekera, that's in Malawi. You would swear that you're talking to somebody in Soweto if you just forget about the accent and you close your eyes, because the impacts are the same. You know, this minerals releases the same amount of affluent discharge, the same amount of dust, as long as it is the same mineral that is being extracted in those countries. So we do work, I did mention, I think earlier on, we work in about 12 countries: Zambia, Lesotho, Mozambique, Swaziland, Botswana, DRC. So there are about 12 countries where I can safely say we have a bit of a stronghold. You know, if I were to pick up a call now and you ask me to hook you up with somebody in that country who's doing the work, I will be able to send you a text within minutes and say, okay, here's a contact of somebody that you can go and talk to. But in other countries, like I said, it is a matter of capacity. Benchmarks, it's a very thinly resourced organization. Or we might be looking intimidating when you look at our reports, you look at the media coverage that we're able to do, the amount of pressure that we're able to put on large companies, but we are less than 12 in the office, you know, comprehensively. This excludes the volunteers. We have so many volunteers who are part of the community monitoring project that we're training in the community. But the core staff of the Benchmarks Foundation, we are about 12.
Thank you, Brown, for showing us how that spatial arrangement of the effect of dust is transcending beyond the boundaries of South Africa in a similar fashion. So David, I can see your hand, and I take it that to be probably the last question, contribution.
I just would like to very quickly add on to what Brown had to say. You know, gold occurs naturally with arsenic. It occurs naturally with a range of other very toxic heavy metals, including silica as well, cadmium, uranium, and so on. But interestingly, also, you find the same combinations in the Zambian copper mines up in the copper belt. You know, so for example, I know copper mines in Solwezi, northeastern or northwestern Zambia, where the mine has put up radon meters in the community and also on its facilities. You know, radon is the gas that results from the decay of uranium. And a few people know it. That's the uranium for the first atom bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima actually came from the DRC, Kolwezi, just across the border from Solwezi in Zambia. And that particular area is also very heavily polluted and impacted with very bad mining practices due to the very weak governance system that there is in the DRC. You know, so we also find quite a lot of respiratory problems and so on, just north of Tet in Mozambique, where we've got the large coal mines and so on that are working in that particular area as well. You know, so South Africa is actually responsible for 89% of the waste production of Africa, and most of that is mining. And South Africa is responsible for 98% of Africa's air pollution, and a lot of that comes from mining and from the processing of minerals, and of course the production of electricity from coal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David, for bringing additional context to that. I cannot see any other hands, or are there any other questions? Mbali has got her hand up, and we've got a minute. Camilla, please give us guidance on that minute.
It's fine. You can go ahead with that question from Bali.
Just the last question. It's a question comment. What is the interest of mining companies when it comes to, you know, rehabilitating the tailings and actually differently using the tailings, like manufacturing bricks and tiles? What is what's your take as benchmarks with regards to that? I'm asking that because the affected communities can actually derive value from such work.
Okay, just a quick response to that one. You might know that in Main Reef Road, if you reside around Johannesburg, in Main Reef Road, when you drive towards Leratong on Main Reef, next to this informal settlement where there are Zamazamas, I forgot what's the name of that area, but on your on your right, there was a huge company there that was creating bricks out of tailings, and it was stopped because by a nuclear regulator, because a tailings dam, just because you are creating what you call bricks with them, it doesn't mean they don't become poisonous. Once rain lands on them and the sun shines on them, they emit. That's what you get from the tailings. If you go to a tailings and it's hot, it might be white in color. You would find you would find what looks like a radiation of some sort that is taking place there. And remember, there are heavy metals that are embedded in these tailings as well. Heavy metals like arsenic, like copper, that are washing off from these tailings once the rain lands on the tailings. So with the same house, it means you are residing in a house that is very poisonous to yourself, but also to your neighbors. Because remember, people will have gardens, and once the rain hits your walls, and then it starts washing off, or you use it for plastering, and then it washes off into your garden service, you don't see it. The particles are so tiny, it goes into your garden, and before you know, people are ill. And there are certain houses that were built, I think we discovered that in around Rudeport, some of the oldest houses that were built, including in Soweto. If you go to Soweto, we are getting a lot of people who are being sick, who are really ill. And some of the old houses in Soweto, you can actually break down that house and take out the sand between the bricks, refine those. You will get more gold than you would get it when you go and mine as an artisanal miner. And you know why? Because when those houses were built, some of them, they used the old tailings, but because the technology was old at the time, they could not take out all the gold that is required. Like now, when they refine the tailings, they're able to take an old tailing, refine it, and extract gold out of that. Those houses, the thing that is in between, what looks like a cement, remember, it's not only that, it is also the roof. This ANC person, what's the roof, this housing? David, what's the roof that you find in Soweto? The one that is
asbestos roof.
Asbestos roof. So it is the bricks of the house that are very problematic, plus the roofs. That's why you get so many people in Soweto having blood cancer, leukemia, eye problem, skin problem, because it's not only the walls that are problematic, but also the roof that the houses that were built with a roof from asbestos. So using that tailing for housing, it is a no-no. We have done a number of research on that, and we are discovering it is a no-go. It is a completely a no-go area.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Brown, for responding to Mbali. And I can see that we've run out of time. But in essence, as the debate would continue in other circles, it is a question of, can we do something prior to having these mine dumps being used for other activity? Can we recover what is harmful first and then find alternative uses? And that is the essence of the research and the ongoing discussions. And the fact that you're bringing this across shows that there is scope for that work to be done, but it is human harm first which should be considered prior to any active engagement in the actual application. It must be proven. So it really shows that we need multiple stakeholders in this area to end up getting to a point where there's a communal agreement as to what is the best approach. So thank you very much, Brown, and thank you very much to everyone who managed to join us for this second theme on stakeholder awareness and education. And thank you for showing us that there are really some active groups there. I had my own question, but I'll leave it for a time when we can talk offline. Camilla?
Thank you, Cledwin. I will end the session now.
Thank you. Bye.